Welcome, Patriot One investors. I'm your host, Lisa Paglia, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today for our regular quarterly webcast to shareholders. Today's format will include a discussion about the state of the business with CEO Peter Evans, some insights into Patriot's new stadium-specific product release, followed by a question and answer session based on questions our investors sent in prior to and during this webcast. We've received dozens of questions from our shareholders, many following along similar themes. During this event, we will try to address the bulk of those questions as time allows. But before we begin our presentation, let me caution you first that our discussion today will include forward-looking statements. These statements may relate to future events and results and are based on management's current views and expectations. There can be no assurance that such statements will prove to be accurate, and actual results in future events could differ materially from those anticipated in such statements because of a number of risks, uncertainties, assumptions, and other factors, many of which are beyond the control of the company. The forward-looking statements contained in this presentation are made as of today, and the company will update or revise publicly any of the included forward-looking statements only as expressly required by applicable law. So with that, Peter, before we get started, any opening comments?
Hey, welcome, Lisa. It's good to see you again, as always, and welcome to our investors. It's always good to have an opportunity to talk to our investors. A couple of quick thoughts before we jump in. Some of the investors may have actually noticed we have two webinars coming up in close proximity to each other, kind of back to back. For a little bit of clarity, today's webinar is a continuation of what we've been doing for the last year, to spend a little bit of time in a bit more of an informal, almost fireside chat type environment, answering the questions that those investors have sent to us or asked us over the course of a quarter. The webinar next week, we will be reviewing our corporate presentation, updating our strategy, addressing the marketplace around that, and talking a bit more about our objectives and our performance. So looking forward to both, and with each having a slightly different purpose and intention for the audience.
Excellent. Well, let's dive in here. We've got a busy agenda. Speaking of busy, it's been another busy quarter for the Patriot One team.
Yeah, it has, Lisa, and it's I'm starting to feel a little bit of like a broken record here. I feel like this every time we get to this this webinar each quarter. But since our last webcast, like the previous one, the visits just keeps accelerating, and as I said before, I've never been this busy my entire career, and that's a good thing. We're having a lot of fun. We're making a lot of difference in the marketplace, and we're really seeing some really significant uptick. Most importantly, what makes me most pleased with inbound interest, right? It's not just us pursuing the market's now pursuing us. Lots of uptick in the customers. People are coming to us and asking about our solutions. A lot of buzz in the marketplace, particularly since things like the release of the NCS4 report. The word's gotten out, and a lot of these target customers tend to talk to each other through the back channels, and we're working very hard to keep up with that. The next 6 weeks alone, gosh, I think myself, my team, others, we're going to be on planes a lot. We've got two very significant major sporting events in the next few weeks. I think we've got activities with 7 pro teams in the NHL, NBA, and actually one PGA event coming up. So it's a busy time for us, and very pleased. It's continuing the same sort of pace that we saw previously, about 1 to 2 significant demonstrations every week. We've been experiencing that pace for the last couple of months, right? These demonstrations, obviously a critical part of the sales process. We'd like to just tell people how great things are. People want to see it in their own environment. That's important. And that's helped move a number of customers kind of through the sales process. So we welcome those opportunities. Of course, I mentioned the NCS4 report that came out just before Christmas timeframe. That's brought a lot of interest, but most importantly, what pleases me is a lot of credibility. We were looking for some very interesting outcomes out of that, and we achieved those, by demonstrating that our product and its capabilities, can stand the test of third-party reviewers. This has increased our exposure to a lot of the pro sports leagues. A lot of folks are looking for more validated solutions, but also to other market segments. It's fascinating to me. I was talking to a gentleman in the casino industry, and he knew about the NCS report, and he knew about all sorts of other activities that were going on. So, it's kind of demonstrated to the marketplace, more than just marketing, that we have one of the most advanced and technically innovative solutions that's out there in the market today. And I'm very pleased with that kind of result in the last 90 days. Now, all this being said, right? The big thing to me has been we continue to learn from the customers. We continue to refine our solutions. We've got ongoing dialogues on working to enhance the product, so we keep getting a tighter and tighter product fit. They're very impressed with how quickly we've iterated. We saw that in the NCS4 report as we learned and changed the product a little bit. And that's a testament to the engineering team we've got also. So across the board, the momentum keeps continuing. The big thing for me is that market feedback result of us listening to them and developing what they want. So all in all, feeling pretty good right now, Lisa.
It sounds it, with reason. You mentioned a couple of times around sporting events. So we've seen a lot of activity around stadiums specifically. Can you talk a little bit more about how this is translating to products and installs?
Yeah, we've been working to really ensure that the product we deliver is what the customers are asking for. You see in the technology world, a lot of organizations develop a product and then they try and fit it into the marketplace. We took a little bit of a different approach to really understand what their needs are. And the latest iterations of our products are getting closer and closer and closer to that purpose-built approach, for stadiums, live entertainment venues and things, really directly addressing their needs, right? The solution obviously gets patrons into the venues much, much faster, get the patrons much, much more experience they deserve. I was talking to one gentleman this morning who's out at the Super Bowl events, and he's talking about the $5 billion venue and the need for this kind of a solution like ours to enhance the overall experience, right? Also the product, where we've gone with it is making sure we fit very seamlessly into the current security operations, not causing a complete force for those, but also the flexibility that you can tailor to every different unique stadium's needs. Some stadiums we've been at are 30 years old. Others, like SoFi, built in the last year. They've got different topologies, different layouts, and we have the flexibility to match with that, which is, resonating well with our customers. So it's a very customer-centric approach that we've taken here, being very, very upfront with our customers about exactly what the products do, exactly what they don't do, but also what does the customer need in order to ensure that it is the result of their solution requirements, right? And we keep turning on those improvements very, very quickly and iterating on those, right? This has actually turned a lot of those customer relationships for us into more than just like a vendor customer, but actually innovative partners. And with those innovative partners, they start to look at us as a long-term partner, not only for today or this quarter, but for the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years. So instead of designing our roadmap around what we thought would improve our product, we've actually designed our roadmap around what makes our product a perfect fit for the customer segments that we're targeting to address, right? And it's a great time to be in the business for this because more and more people are actively seeking. Specific features, are coming to the forefront quite quickly. We'll see that with more iterations and announcements around the product. I mean, if I think back, Lisa, when I look at kind of when I joined the company about a year ago and I was assessing the product, it was originally designed to be very it's not a real world application. And consequently, we've had to change the product a little bit to fit more of what the real world application is, right? The feature functionality we've delivered, after studying and working very, very closely with the staff of these venues, it enables the staff to operate much more effectively and to leverage the digital insights that we're providing them to actually guide and improve operations, refine their security, and even optimize kind of the patron experience itself. So, we're very pleased with that kind of very symbiotic, very partnered innovation approach that we're taking with the marketplace right now.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter. It sounds like so there's been a lot of activity on the sales front. We saw the release about the Office of the Inspector General. Can you talk a little bit more about that relationship and any other deployments that you can talk to?
Sure. So let's talk about OIG, specifically the Office of the Inspector General. And there's sort of two elements of this. The Department of General Services, who we work very closely with, provides services to many organizations, including the OIG. And there's a bit of a partnership there that resulted in our first application with the OIG. The Department of DGS, they provide services to things like OIG, but also to many other organizations, Department of Homeland Security, DOJ, Health and Human Services, and many others, right? And they're responsible for a broad set of services, including safety, to all those federal organizations. So as an example, they provide services, safety, these kinds of things to 157 million square feet of outdoor space, something like $57 million of indoor space in just the Washington, D.C. area alone. And those services are very broad, very rich, but include security aspects to them. So the relationship is just starting though. It's a very large organization, right? And like many of our relationships, they sort of start with, let's go into one location, perhaps one main entry door. Now let's do the building. Now let's do the next buildings. Now let's do this area. And so we see this being a progressive set of kind of rollouts and activities with them. We're already having good conversations about, okay, the first application and the next and the next and the next, right? Incredible potential of this customer, given the breadth of service offerings across all these different US federal government organizations. We're already engaged with them, as I said, with these kind of discussions about potential for both, for them as both a customer, but also like the stadiums as an innovation partner, because they see so many things in that kind of environment that they're operating in, that they're coming to us with all sorts of interesting ideas of where they'd like to take security next. So a nice, tight, innovative partnership there across their buildings, service centers, video camera systems that are run across the Washington area and these things. Another good example of kind of a customer experience we've had, and I might have mentioned this on the last investor call we had. I talked about winning a piece of business with a manufacturing company. Very typical rollout for us in that situation, where they started with one unit at one entrance, validate it, fit their business model, fit what they were looking for. Very pleased with that. Rolled out to about half a dozen entrances across that manufacturing facility. And the conversations that started about a week or two ago are now talking about their supply chain customers who are in the same geographic area, also being requested to provide our services around them. And they're looking at their other manufacturing locations. So we see these kind of progressive steps in all of these relationships with these customers. It sort of almost creates a little bit of an accelerated demand within that one customer, and we can stack more and more customers like that together. So, overall, very pleased with how we're seeing the progress and the models moving.
Excellent. Actually, we had a question related to OIG. Specifically, does the work with OIG result in Patriot One achieving DHS Safety Act certification?
Yeah, I've seen that question quite a bit recently, Lisa, since we announced this, and they're kind of yes and no answer to that. On the one hand, the DHS Safety Act certification, it's an independent process and has very, very specific steps that must be followed, right? And so we'll have to go through that situation regardless. However, part of the process is having key customers who have experience with the product set, and of course, having someone like the OIG who works closely with the DHS as a key customer, as that volume of customers that we can bring into the process as part of that certification process. However, just by virtue of having the OIG, it doesn't circumvent the process, doesn't accelerate, doesn't decelerate. One still has to go through the same rigor of the process.
Got it. Thanks, Peter. We also received a number of questions on your long-term vision for Patriot One. So here's a fun one. Where do you see Patriot in 3 to 5 years?
That's like that question they always ask you in a job interview. What's your career aspiration in 3 to 5 years? Okay, so we've talked a little bit about this, Lisa, but it's probably worth restating. Look, we have a very, very good product market fit to certain segments. Others, close fit, but not a perfect fit, right? The perfect fit, stadiums, entertainment, theaters, casino marketplaces, things like that. And we're focused on that marketplace because most of those markets are very interested in solutions right now. Our product fits very well right now, and it's a very good market that we can serve very well today. It's about a $4.6 billion market in North America alone. And so, that's a very good marketplace, and we're going to strive and work very, very hard, quite frankly, to be the dominant player in that space where we fit very well. We've made significant inroads. Things like the NCS4 reports, other activities that we've done have validated that that is a place that we can play very, very effectively. So that's where we're going to go first. Beyond that, though, that's a marketplace we'll aggressively pursue. We do have inbound interest from other segments, and we do serve those, but the maniacal focus is on serving that market very, very well. Beyond that, look, we intend to leverage the innovation in our technology, the platform we've already put in place, to start to move into adjacent markets. Distribution centers, warehousing, these sorts of things, where it actually is a very, very good fit. And we're also seeing very high interest in inbound leads that are coming in. Our products and future iterations of that product are going to bring the same sort of incremental value to those segments as they are to our current customers that we're targeting today, right? These environments are a little bit more sort of medium clutter environments, a little bit different from the stadiums, a little bit different sets of requirements in order to meet their security operations needs. And with some slight iterations on the product as we deliver those, we'll start to open up that segment of the marketplace and grow into that. That's about a $35-ish billion marketplace that we'll be moving our to once we've established and dominated this core marketplace today.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, Peter. Switching gears a bit, can you talk more about the company's sales model for the platform?
Sure. For the customers, we offer two sales options, right? There are those customers who want to purchase outright and then buy recurring maintenance that provides software updates, support, warranties, and things like that on an ongoing basis annually. Perfect. For those customers, happy to serve them. There's others who want more of a SaaS type subscription model. They've got OpEx, dollars available versus CapEx, and we will serve them by essentially signing a multi-year term, typically 3 years, right? And then, it's a subscription model of those sorts of 3 years, right? It really depends on the customer's buying preference, CapEx, OpEx type models, and those sorts of things, right? There's also kind of huge advantages to us for both methods, right? Customers paying up front obviously helps us with cash flow perspective, right? Personally, I like having customers that fall into a SaaS model, right? Where we can build that monthly recurring revenue model, right? It becomes very predictable revenues and smooths out the choppiness in any financial reporting, right? As we all know that SaaS models build revenues over time. And so you start to see things like our bookings backlog building, which is telling us about the contracts have been signed and revenue recognition will occur over time. Okay.
Okay. All right. Next up, so we're going to shift to take some questions, if that's okay with you. We've
Sure.
got quite a few. So if you're ready to dive in, we group them together. There's some common questions or common groups of questions around certain topics. And the first one is around the company's current operations. We had a number of questions specific to this area. So starting with, can you talk about the manufacturing and distribution process and your future plans for this?
Yeah, it's a great question, particularly with the ramp up of revenues that we're seeing. We've worked quite a bit over the last, I want to say the year or so, to really increase our manufacturing capabilities. We've got to really, let's talk about this from two sides. First off, from the supply chain side, as we all know, there's a bit of a global supply chain challenge that's out there right now. And we kind of started to see this coming, particularly as a time that our revenues were ramping, and we've addressed that. We had a little bit of a bump in January timeframe, but didn't affect any of our deployments or revenues. And we've now kind of worked our way through. So we're very comfortable with where we are in terms of supply chain. So on that side of the operations, we're good. On the manufacturing, creating products and getting them out the door, we're actually in a good place too. We've got two subcontract contract manufacturers, that we can actually provide the capacity that we need based on our forecast for revenues and numbers of units that we're going to ship over the next 2 years. So we're in really good shape for at minimum 2 years, even with some of the most aggressive forecasts that we have in our business plans.
Okay. Here's another one. Can you give a rough breakdown of employees by department and talk about your hiring plans?
Sure. Right now, overall employees, about 50% of them are in the R&D area, in the product development area. And we're continuing to invest there, particularly in areas like AI and things like that. The remaining employees in the company are primarily focused on sales or operations. I see us continuing to grow our sales and our customer success organizations, as well as our supply chain and operations folks, as we kind of continue to build out sales momentum. We've got a very solid R&D team. They're innovating very, very quickly. And where scale is going to demand us to grow our business is going to be on the sales side, the customer servicing side, and the operations to deal with that capacity.
Okay. Another very popular one. Will you present any financial targets?
Yeah, we get this a lot. People wanting to know our forecast and our forecasting. Look, I think I'd probably be doing a disservice, right, if we got too aggressive around providing forecasts right now. It's something we absolutely intend to announce in the future. But let's face reality. We've really been driving revenues for about 3-ish quarters so far. 3-ish quarters is not a trend, particularly what we've seen with the ups and downs of COVID, the ups and downs of supply chain and things like that. We're not there yet. We're still in the early commercialization stages, and we're learning as a company, but we're moving quickly, right? To provide a forecast might be a little bit of a disservice. One very large deal could completely skew the numbers, right? And create some uncertainty in the marketplace. Once we have a large number of quarters in a row, they're showing repeatable, sustainable revenue growth numbers, right? And we kind of see what the choppiness may or may not look like. we've got that stability, we've got that predictability, no challenges from things like COVID, then we'll start providing forecasts out to the marketplace. Right now, like I said, one large deal could radically skew the numbers. And the only thing I could really predict with any sort of accuracy is that any prediction I give will probably be wrong, right? Because of market uncertainties.
Okay.
So, we'll keep attacking the segments. We're going to keep driving revenues. And as we start to see that stability, I guess, Lisa, the best answer to that is we will then start providing guidance to the investors.
Got it. Okay, well, separate but related, there were, as you can imagine, a number of questions on sales.
Yeah.
So specifically, it's obvious that there is a lot of momentum. You're gaining traction from a sales perspective. Why aren't we seeing more press releases on specific customers or contracts that you're signing?
Yeah, we get this question every single webinar. And I'll give the same answer I would before. I would love to announce every single customer we win because I'm very proud of every single one of them. I'm proud of our sales guys for the work and the effort, not just to close the deal, but to really provide a solution that satisfies the customers, right? We'd love to do this in every form that we can. So, but let me answer the question again and see if we can't answer it once and for all. But we have been closing on sales. You'll see that in our order backlog as it builds, right? We've also, where we can, selectively press releasing certain sales, like the OIG announcement, right? As we work through that, we obtain permission to do that. Of course, we're going to announce, right? But we can't always. Some of the customers do not want to announce their security strategies. They'll do the same thing with cybersecurity. They won't announce their cybersecurity strategy because they don't want to announce to those with malicious intent what they're doing in case it informs those with malicious intent. Right? So many customers are very reluctant to announce vendors at all, let alone security vendors at all, right? So they're very hesitant. And we're going to respect that. Other news might leak out in other ways. Somebody happens to visit a stadium and sees our technology and does a story, but we cannot breach those non-disclosure agreements ourselves, right? We also have some situations where when we do announce some of these things, the investors take it upon themselves to start calling those customers. We have a responsibility to protect our customers, act professionally and things like that. And so we want to make sure that we're doing things in a professional manner for those customers. And I ask our investors to do the same sorts of things. Okay. All that being said, the investors have my commitment that when we're allowed to announce a key customer and it's appropriate, we will make sure we do so. And I invite them, though, to focus on our sales backlog and see how it's building. Right? And look at those quarterly filings of that information, because that gives an indication of the health of the customers and the health of our business.
Okay. Can you give an update on the manufacturing potential customer you hinted at in the last webinar?
Yeah, I think I might have briefly mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention it again. So we got a large number of manufacturing customers right now I'm very pleased with. But the one in particular that I hinted at the last time, they, as I said, we went in with one unit into one entrance. They want to protect sort of a major entrance of the building. That worked very well. They've now surrounded essentially the whole manufacturing plant and all the entrances for all the employees. Particularly, they were concerned about shift changeover. That's gone so well. They're now starting to look at their supply chain and asking their suppliers who are in the same geographic proximity to start looking at our technology. And we've started a conversation with them about other manufacturing plants here in North America. So again, we see small kind of little acorns starting to grow into bigger and bigger oak trees as part of the whole sales process and how people typically adopt new technology and new innovation.
Okay. Well, so on that note, can you talk a little bit more about your sales pipeline and what the sales cycle looks like overall?
Yeah, we've seen a real difference, particularly I want to say in about the last 90, 120 days. The sales cycle itself is starting to shorten a lot. And there's a lot of reasons for that. First off, referenceability, more customers that we can have talk to other customers. We take customers to other sites and they actually can see the technology at work, right? Now, that doesn't preclude people wanting to put the technology in their own environment and kicking the tires themselves, right? We've also got a lot of growing experiences in deploying with the customers. We've learned a lot about how to deploy in a variety of different environments, stadiums, manufacturing environments, casinos. They're all very different and they each have their own challenges. So as we've actually learned ways to, get on site, implement faster, and actually shorten that sales cycle and the learning process for the customers, right? We've also built in a very specific training program. This was the request of one of the pro leagues that would be put onto an LMS system. And we've partnered with third-party organizations that actually specialize in assisting customers to refine their operations, their security operations, and training for their staff using the tools we built. So that helps them get up and running much faster, right? With the recent certifications from things like NCS4 and other organizations that certified us against NILAC and NIJ, that's actually given the confidence for the customers to buy faster, not having to figure they have to go through all that rigor themselves, right? And then, of course, we're becoming much more adept, quite frankly, at qualifying opportunities and focusing on what we believe are real opportunities that can qualify in and deserve our attention versus those that aren't a good fit for us. The customer may not have budget, may not have time, may not have the right decision-making authority, and making sure that we're spending the right time with organizations such as manufacturing or distribution or commercial properties and things like that. So not as much time spent on things that might be a little bit of a red herring. So overall, I think we've seen a shortening of the cycle due to a lot of these activities. Some of them learned, and some of them customer confidence driven.
Okay. Looking at the customers, has any customer with a trial or a small initial installation, have they made a larger commitment after they've seen it in action?
Sure. I mentioned the manufacturing customer. We've had a handful of casinos have gone through a try and buy scenario and are now deploying. Some of them smaller, some of them larger. One very large commercial organization that started with one system in their headquarters building. I like this customer a lot. They've been a great innovative partner. And every time we do new iterations of the software, the technology, they're the first ones who want to take it in, kick the tires on it in real world environment with people walking through it and giving us great feedback. That contract was formally signed this quarter, and we're very pleased to be working with that. So casino, manufacturing companies, commercial property, we're seeing kind of a lot of success around that pilot to production activity.
Okay, thanks, Peter. There were also some questions about communicating to investors. So more specifically, can you provide more color on the sales backlog?
Yeah, we can. We're starting to include more and more information about our backlog in our reporting. You'll see that in our next financial report. The backlog to me is one of the most important numbers that the investors should be looking at because, they are contracts for much longer term commitments by our customers. They won't necessarily show up those contracts in revenue, as we referred to earlier, the SaaS model. Someone signs a contract, but it will be ratable revenue over the course of the length of the term of the contract. As we build out these subscription contracts, we expect the majority of revenue streams will be included in those sales backlogs, right, and earn that revenue of that subscription term. We're excited about the growing backlog. It is growing, as you will see in the next financial statements, very aggressively and, very confidently. And so, I couldn't be more pleased right now with where we are. With these contracts, the subscriptions are with different types of customers. As I mentioned earlier, casinos, commercial buildings, museums, some growth and significant growth in our AI professional services contracts, right? I don't know that we've actually announced the quarter yet. We will be talking more a bit about it, but the millions of dollars that we have in the current backlog, about half of that is pending installation, and we expect to take place over the next month or so, and we'll start to see that turn to ratable revenue.
Okay. There are also a number of questions about the future of the company, including some speculating that we might be bought now that we have proven technologies and customers, and asking a question about whether there are plans to buy Patriot One.
This question kind of always fascinates me, Lisa. How does anyone expect us to answer a question like that, right? Yeah, I see some of the speculation on the chat boards and things like that, or someone will forward to me occasionally. I don't really have much time for chat boards, to be quite honest. But look, we're a publicly traded company, okay? If there's information that is material that we have to inform the investors about, we will, right? As a publicly traded company, though, you got a board. They were voted in place by the investors. The board has put myself and the executive team in place, right? They've hired us to do a job. And one of the stated objectives for the company, right, is to maximize shareholder value and grow a business with predictable revenue, sustainable business models, and things like that, right? And so we will always be looking at any option for the company that will maximize shareholder value. That's our fiduciary responsibility, right? And some of those opportunities may be anything from as you asked, I think people buying the company or, or partnering or, taking in investments, whether it's small investments, large investments, there's thousands of options that are out there. We have a job to do a fiduciary responsibility to review each one of them and assess them and determine what is in the best interest of the shareholders, right? We'll constantly be evaluating those things as a board, right? And they could be very wide ranging, but we will always look at all of them, right? Some of these options may or may not be more or less appealing, depending on the state of the company, and each one will have a different context around it based on market conditions, right? The financial market, the marketplace itself, what COVID is doing, all these sorts of things. We will never shed our fiduciary responsibility. But to be able to say today, yes, it's a plan to buy. No, we cannot divulge any of the kinds of conversations that are being contemplated until it's actually material information. So can't really answer that question other than say we will always do the very best we can for the shareholders, and that's my commitment.
Okay, well said. We have a question about the recently awarded Canadian government contracts. What are they, and what do they mean for Patriot One? How does this relate to Extract?
Yeah, we have been winning a number of contracts with the Canadian government. We're very happy with that. And to put in context that Extract is fully integrated into Patriot One. They are our AI innovation arm, that the house, the farm, or whatever you want to say within the R&D organization, right? That focuses on those AI developments. We have taken a strategy that we look at some of these opportunities where the Canadian government and others come to us and ask us to do specific work. And if we see it's something that is accretive to our business model and actually accelerates the Patriot One strategy and the innovation that we can put on our platform to address a broader set of requirements for our customers, we will deliver on it. We will go accept that. If it's something that's a little bit of a distraction and not core to our business, probably not something that we're going to undertake, right? We incorporate this information into our IP portfolio. We run that through an innovation committee that reviews each of these opportunities, make sure that we're carefully only taking on those contracts that are in perfect alignment, right, with what the strategy is for Patriot One, and that are very accretive to our portfolio, and we see can actually open up more marketplaces for us and more opportunities. We don't want to get distracted by the cool projects, right, that don't fit our strategy. And so everything is carefully evaluated, everything is carefully integrated, and make sure it fits to our business model. So some of the recent government contracts, right, those are kinds of things that will enhance our AI capabilities, right? They will help us do things like categorize objects and threats and detection and things like that as part of our overall security, patron experience portfolio of capabilities, okay? As those things come to fruition, we'll be sure to announce those out to the marketplace.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to leave the viewers with today before we sign off?
Well, first off, I think I mentioned when we started, I'd like to invite any of our investors to kind of join us on the webinar that's scheduled for next week on February 16th. There I'm going to be presenting the new corporate presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about the strategy, the objectives, some of the results and things like that. And we're very, very excited to share that story with not only this investor community, but a much broader investor community, okay? Second, I couldn't be happier right now. I have this kind of high degree of confidence that 2022 is going to be a very solid year for Patriot One. We've laid a really good foundation over the last 9-10 months, right? We've got our eyes on a target. We've got a really, really good team that I'm very pleased with, and they're very, very focused on driving innovation and moving at a pace that's incredibly fast. High customer interest. The inbound calls are almost overwhelming. I mean, it's going to be a great year. I'm feeling very, very good about where we are right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you, and hopefully this has provided some high value to our investors. And again, we thank them for working with us here at Patriot One.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Bye now.
Bye.